It's hard to believe, but students head back to school in just 2 weeks. As of now, the state's Board of Education is leaving it up to each individual school district as of how they will reopen their classrooms. But one thing Nixon Norman says every expert is doing is urging every child and teacher that can do to get vaccinated.
In-person learning is, we know now, really superior to the remote learning. Remote learning got us through some hard times, but it also introduced a lot of difficulties and challenges for children and adolescents.
Remote learning helped keep kids from getting infected, but caused other issues related to socialization, mental health, and learning. Besides slowing transmission, there was another benefit that came out of what we all went through last school year. Because many local schools returned to in-person learning last fall, in some capacity or another, many already know how to deal with opening back up while also dealing with a pandemic. But Kimberlin really encourages schools and education boards to refer to the CDC about any major decisions.
And what the CDC right now is recommending is get your vaccine if you're 12 or over. And if you're unvaccinated, mask, and ideally 3 feet, more than 3 feet social distance to the extent possible. The social distancing has some flexibility there depending on the layout of the classroom and the circulation of the air. So there's some ability to adapt the recommendations coming out of CDC for any given environment in a given classroom or a given school system.
He says that getting vaccinated will help protect the safety of every student and employee in school.
That's what's going to, number one, protect that person's health, perhaps that person's life, but also their loved ones, their friends, their neighbors, their schoolmates, the classroom workers, the cafeteria workers at their schools, and so forth.
Putting the Valley first, Nixon Norman, WZDX News.